It's really sad when I think about my younger self and just all the things I did to try to hide my imperfections and portray this perfect image. And now it's so funny because in my 30s, I see imperfections and vulnerability and admitting weakness as a courageous act of strength. I actually see it as the opposite because it's easy to try and pretend to be perfect. It's easy to hide behind a mask of perfection. It is not easy. It is much harder to be your authentic self in today's world because it means risking rejection. It means putting yourself out there and it's confronting that fear of rejection and not being accepted. Hey, friends, welcome back to the Choosing to Heal podcast. This week, I turn 34, and I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to pause and reflect on how different I feel in my 30s versus in my 20s. I'm talking like 10 years makes the biggest difference. Have you ever heard the saying, like, 30s are your new 20s, 40s are your new 30s, and so on and so forth? I hear that all the time. And I feel like it could go one of two ways. People can view aging as like a bad thing, getting older is like the worst. So far, I love getting older. I feel like each year I become more wise. I become more in tune with my authentic self, with who I am supposed to be, who I was created to be, who I want to be. I feel like I'm able to show up more in alignment with my values. I feel like I know who I am more. So, all that to say, today I'm going to be sharing 10 things that I am no longer giving energy to in my 30s. All right, let's just get right to it. Number one is superficial relationships. So it seems like the older I get, the smaller my social circle gets. And I'm not mad about it. To be quite honest, it's actually kind of nice to have such a small circle of friends. I think about what has changed. And when I was younger, I used to have a lot of acquaintances and people that I would meet by default. And what I mean by that is just people that you meet through life events, whether that's neighbors, moms that you meet through your kids' classes, the PTA. And these aren't necessarily people that you choose. They're kind of people that you encounter by just living your life. And you can meet a lot of people that way, as I'm sure you know. What I found was as I kept living my life, this list of acquaintances that I knew or had contact with kept growing and growing. The problem was I felt like obligated or guilty if I didn't spend time with each of them. So whether that was a text message from someone I had just met at school and it was like, "Hey girl, do you want to hang out or go to lunch, or I'd love to get to know you better," or all of these things. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. Like, we're social creatures and it's great to meet new people and engage, but it was like the sheer quantity I have invitations and text messages and I felt like bogged down by all of these social interactions, even if they were small. And it kind of made me feel trapped in a way. And so, what would happen is I would say, "Yes, I'd love to go to lunch with you." And then, back then, if we didn't really click or if we didn't really hit it off, that wouldn't really matter to me because at that point, I had already invested my time in them. It was so hard for me to say no to future invitations because now I've gone to lunch with this person. Like, we've formed this quote unquote relationship or at least acquaintance. And so, anyway, long story short, I found that I had a lot of surface level relationships and very few deep, intimate friendships. In my 30s, that's just not something that I give a lot of time to. So, the amount of people that I meet and the amount of acquaintances I have hasn't necessarily decreased or changed. I think the difference is I just don't feel bad saying no to invitations or just not making those interactions as big of a priority. We have such little free time. And instead of bending over backwards to try to fit in lunch with someone that I don't really know, and to be honest, like if I'm in a season of life where meeting new people and creating new friendships isn't a priority, or if I feel like fully supported and fulfilled with the relationships that I have, like I'm not going to bend over backwards to pencil them into my life. And I don't feel bad because you can't say yes without saying no to something else. And so now it's like I have that perspective that, okay, if I say yes to this, that means no to spending time with my kids, or that means no to catching up with my best friend, or whatever it may be. And I really try to reserve that time for the people who truly matter most to me. The second thing that I'm no longer giving energy to in my 30s, and this is a recent one as of this year, is alcohol. I never thought that I would be that person. I never thought that I would ever be sitting here telling you that I am sober and I don't drink. And that is because I actually like drinking. I like drinks. I love wine. I was born and raised in wine country. I love a good Pinot Noir. I love a good glass of champagne, a mimosa. I love mojitos and an espresso martini. So it's not that I like have an aversion to alcohol. I guess I'm just at a point in my life where I've spent so much time seeing the negative impact that alcohol has, especially people in my life, that the draw of it isn't as great. And I started to feel this inner conflict by engaging in something or doing something that has caused so much pain in my life. Whereas before it was like fun and exciting when you're in your 20s. It's like everybody's doing it and you go out and it's like you go out, you get a drink. That's like what you do. And that just didn't have the same pull as it used to. And as I've grown and matured and I guess shed those parts of myself that felt the need to blend in and be like everybody else, and I've discovered like what's important to me and my values, I guess that has all paved the path to where I am today. And my partner Joshua and I, we came to this decision together. We both kind of had the same view on drinking. We weren't big drinkers. We would go to wineries here and there. We loved going wine tasting together, more so for the scenery and the experience and like making a date out of it than anything. And we would go to dinner and have like a glass of wine or a cocktail. But neither one of us were big drinkers. And both of us had the same values surrounding alcohol. You know, we would wake up the next day just not feeling great. And it's not exactly ideal to have just one drink and have the next day be entirely ruined, but that's how it was feeling. Like I would have a migraine, just feel groggy, not my best self. And I was like, this isn't worth it. It's just not worth it. And so we both looked at each other one day and we're like, why are we doing this? Like, why don't we just stop? Why don't we just stop and see what happens? And that's when it kind of prompted us to think about how nice it would be to just have that sort of autonomy, or like to be able to declare that for ourselves. Like, you know what? We don't drink and we're choosing not to drink. It's very empowering to be able to say that, because I certainly didn't feel like I was ever going to be able to say that. Like, you know, I couldn't tell you the last time I went longer than maybe a week without having at least a glass of wine or a cocktail at dinner or whatever. And, you know, there's certain areas of my life where I don't always act in alignment like I want to, but it's still hard for me to show up the way that I want to in every single scenario. And so I guess this is a place in my life where it feels good to know that this is a decision and a behavior and an action that I'm taking that is fully in alignment with my values, with what's important to me and how I want to show up, which gives me more confidence in other areas of my life that, okay, Monica, if something's really important to you, even if it seems hard, you actually do have the capacity and the ability to do these hard things and show up in alignment with your best self. The next thing that I am no longer giving energy to in my 30s is trying to change or convince other people. Let me tell you, this is a big one. Honestly, for so much of my life, I could only be happy if other people around me agreed with me, thought like me, liked the same things as me, or saw it exactly from my point of view. And it made me very uncomfortable to be around other people who had differing opinions, who didn't agree with me. And so, what I would do with that discomfort is try to change the external thing that was causing me discomfort, which was the person, right? So if them being different or saying something differently made me uncomfortable, to me, the solution was let me try to make them see it from my point of view. Let me try to change their behavior so their behavior doesn't make me uncomfortable. It was very like outwardly focused. And the day that I finally realized that the answer was within me and learning how to manage my own discomfort and manage myself rather than other people, like it changed my life. It was such a huge turning point. in my maturity as a person. And so that didn't happen, honestly, until my very early 30s. Now it's so nice knowing that my peace isn't determined on somebody else, right? It gets so empowering to know that regardless of how someone else shows up, regardless of how they feel, act, think, that I still am going to be okay. And then I have the tools and the skills to be able to like self regulate and not try to project my insecurities onto somebody else by trying to fix them or change them or control them or get them to see it my way. The other thing, too, that I realize is that people have to want it for themselves. And I am all too familiar with trying to get someone to do something just so that it would make me happy. And man, did I learn that the hard way. And that's the thing about trying to change people. It's like you can control and nag and push someone to do it, and they might do it, but that doesn't mean that it's an authentic choice. And if they're doing it just to appease you, just to make you happy, really it's not going to make you happy in the long run anyway. It's just going to continue to cause more resentment, more issues. And so learning all of these things has been a very enlightening experience to say the least. So that's one thing that I am letting go of and not giving energy to. Now I just see it as a pointless waste of time, to be perfectly honest. The fourth thing I'm not giving energy to in my 30s is trying to prove myself. I used to do this in so many different ways. The biggest one was with my career. And I realized that I was doing this to prove that I was capable, that I was worthy, that I was good enough, that I was smart, that I was pretty, that I was likable, that I was funny. But I wanted other people to see that in me. I wasn't able to find it within. And man, it's so healing when you finally learn how to find that internal validation because it gives you the ability to let go of having to like rely on it externally. And that's exhausting. And it's so dependent on your circumstances. It's so dependent on other people. And we have no control over other people at all. And so now in the season of life in my 30s, like I know that I am capable without having to prove it. And that's such a big deal. Like before, I might have known that I was capable and really good at my job, for example, my career, but I was too scared to stop performing. If I stopped performing and I was in a season of rest, I was so scared that because other people wouldn't see me doing it, that they wouldn't think I was capable of it. So it left me feeling like I could never miss a beat. I could never drop the ball. And it was exhausting because I needed to maintain this image so that other people would continue to see me in that positive light, that they would continue to see me as good enough and smart and successful and all of these things. And so it was really all motivated by fear of feeling that shame, fear of feeling failure. Now, my worth isn't hinged on having to prove to others how good enough I am. The next thing that I am not giving energy to in my 30s, at least for the most part, is what I wear. And for those of you who are listening to the audio version of this podcast, you can't see what I'm wearing, but I am filming this on the couch of my house in my pajamas because comfort over everything. That's how I feel. That is my motto these days is if it's not comfortable, I'm not going to wear it. Why did I put this on this list? This might not seem like a big deal, like, okay, what you wear. But for me, it was. And let me give you the context as to why. So in high school, I was named best dressed, like all of the different like awards you can win, like funniest or whatever. Mine was best dressed. That is because I put so much effort into what I wore, how I showed up at school. Unfortunately, it was from a place of, again, wanting that validation, that external validation from others. It's ironic because now that I've started to dig deep and do the work, I've realized that so much of that had to do with having a parent who placed so much emphasis on appearance, feeling like that was the way that I was going to earn acceptance and approval and love. My mom, she's from a different country and she put so much emphasis on how she looked because that is the main value she felt she had to offer to men. It absolutely had a trickle down effect into how I saw myself and how I showed up in the world. And so it doesn't surprise me that I placed so much priority and emphasis on how I looked externally was because that is what was modeled to me and it was what was reinforced in me by my mom. I grew up and I was a personal stylist and I made a career of that and I would get on these live videos with a full face of makeup, all of the jewelry, the shoes and the whole nine yards, like New Year's Eve and going on a date was like a full on event. with glitter and high heels and a bougie dinner and the whole thing. And don't get me wrong, I still love glitter, but I'm so much happier being at home in my comfy pants, snuggled up on the couch with no makeup on. It's a big deal that I'm filming this right now with like no lashes on. And so it has taken me a very, 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 very long time to feel comfortable in my own skin. When I got divorced, I got rid of like 80% of my wardrobe. And so I have more of a minimalist wardrobe. And that is like so freeing to me. It's almost like I've shed this layer of insecurity. And, the reason I put what I wear on this list rather than what I look like is because body image is still one that I'm struggling with. And my hope is that by the time I'm filming the version of this in my 40s, I'll be able to put what I look like on this list. My body image has been severely wounded by my childhood. And basically, without making this hours long, just to kind of give you some context, my mom is someone who she recently texted me a picture of Joshua and I on the beach on our recent vacation in Jamaica. I had sent out an email to my email list with a picture of us on the beach. And what she texted to me was a screenshot of that picture saying, "Monica, are you pregnant?" Her first reaction wasn't, "Hey, honey, did you have fun on your vacation?" Or, "Wow, you look so happy and in love in this picture." It was, "You look so fat in this picture that you must be pregnant." So, as you can imagine, and this is not the first time stuff like this has happened, having a parent like that, it has really affected my mental state in more ways than one. Like I'm sorry if I don't look like a beanpole that I'm considered fat and pregnant by my own mom. So anyway, all that to say, letting go of what I wear and making progress in this area is a really big deal for me. And I'm going to continue to try to make these small steps, like showing up with no makeup on, filming a podcast episode with no lashes. Like those things to other people may seem really small and insignificant and not like a big deal at all, but it has certainly caused me a lot of grief in my life. And so hopefully I will be able to report back at a later time and share progress that I've made in that area.
So you're finally ready to start doing the work. The only problem, you have no clue where to start or what to do. That's where the Choosing to Heal community comes in. It's like a cozy virtual hangout where you can connect with others who actually get it. With our book club, step-by-step resources, and built-in accountability check-ins, you'll feel seen, validated, and supported every step of the way. And you'll gain exclusive access to my live podcast discussion where you can come chat with me and ask questions about anything we talk about here on the podcast. It's time to say goodbye to feeling stuck, alone, and overwhelmed, and hello to the tribe you didn't know you needed. Visit choosingtoheal.com/community or head to the show notes in the description of this episode to learn more.
Number 6 on the list is I am no longer giving energy to drama, negativity, or gossip. And I won't say that I ever enjoyed drama or gossip, like who does? I guess some people do. But I did feel like I had to participate in it to be accepted. And, in my 20s, I was very much a chameleon. Like depending on who I was around, I would mold myself to be who I thought the people around me wanted me to be so that I would feel accepted and earn that approval and being liked because and in order to earn that acceptance and approval and being liked, it meant that I had to manipulate myself and who I was in order to be liked by other people. That's how I showed up. So that meant if they were gossiping, I felt like I had to agree or hop on the bandwagon or participate in it so they wouldn't reject me, right? It's very like to be a part of the cool kids club kind of mentality, which is very immature, but it makes so much sense as to how so many people fall into this because so many of us had to manipulate ourselves in order to receive love and approval from our parents growing up and based on our life experiences. Nowadays, I do not participate in that at all. I feel like I can recognize negativity and gossip and drama instantly. I have this innate ability to be like, nope, I am staying so far away from that. For example, I was with a group of girlfriends. I don't know how it came up, but almost all of them had something to say about this other girl who wasn't there. And I watched each of them comment about it. And I straight up just said, no, I don't agree. I actually like her. I just didn't care if that meant that they were going to say something about me as soon as I left. And what I loved is that later that day, one of the girls that was there, she told me in private, she was like, wow, Monica, when you said that, I was like, I want to be that kind of person who sticks up for somebody else. I just wanted to let you know that it really inspired me. I feel like in my 30s, I'm able to act according to my character and like my values and just sniff it out and avoid it like the black plague. That is my MO now. Ain't nobody got time for that. The next thing I'm not giving energy to is feeling guilty for saying no. I am proud to say that I have no problem setting boundaries in this season of life. And that took a very long time to learn. I used to feel so bad and worry about how someone would react or view me if I said no. And that would cause me to people please and say yes to everything because I didn't want to let them down. And again, it all had to do with, well, if I let them down or if it makes them upset with me, then it will mean that I'm bad or it will reflect back the shame that I feel about myself. And so I've learned to let go of other people's reactions, knowing that it has everything to do with them. Their reactions have to do with what is being triggered within them based on their own life experiences and it has nothing to do with me. Learning how to let go of that guilt and set boundaries has allowed me to fill my life with things that I intentionally want to spend my time doing. It's not like reactively saying yes to everything. Making progress in this area has allowed me to feel in the driver's seat of my life rather than like at the mercy of everyone else or at the mercy of my schedule, which is overextended because I just fill it with things because I don't have the capacity or ability to say no. The eighth thing that I'm not giving energy to in my 30s is trying to be perfect or without any flaws. It's really sad when I think about my younger self, and maybe you can think back to like being in high school or whenever this showed up for you if it did. And just all the things I did to try to hide my imperfections and portray this perfect image. Like I went to so many lengths. I already talked about like getting best dressed in high school and like manipulating myself to be who I thought other people wanted to be, which was perfect because that's what I believed other people wanted. God forbid they find out about my shortcomings. God forbid they see this crazy side of me, the bad side of me. And now it's so funny because in my 30s, I see imperfections and vulnerability and admitting weakness as a courageous act of strength. I actually see it as the opposite because it's easy to try and pretend to be perfect. It's easy to hide behind a mask of perfection. It is not easy. It is very hard. It is much harder to be your authentic self in today's world because it means risking rejection. It means putting yourself out there and it's confronting that fear of rejection and not being accepted and all of the things. And so in my 30s, my goal is to continue to let go of all of the ways in which I'm trying to portray an image to be perfect and work more and more in showing up as my authentic self, which means embracing all of my flaws, all of my imperfections, and knowing that those are the things that help me grow. And just because I have a weakness or I am not fully healed or perfect in an area doesn't mean those parts of me are bad. They're opportunities for growth and they're there to help me grow and become my best authentic self. Number nine, what I'm no longer giving energy to is things that don't interest me. If I don't want to do something, then I'm not going to do it. If I get invited to a party or going out to a bar or a nightclub or whatever, I don't get invitations to go out to nightclubs. Like, I'm not going to say yes because I feel obligated to or because I feel bad. Like, life is too short to spend time doing things that you don't want to do just because you worry about what someone might think or offending them. And it's okay if you actually advocate for what you want and what you need. The other thing that comes to mind on this topic is starting something and being okay with quitting. And what I mean by that is like so many times I would start something like a project, but I would continue doing it past the point of it being fulfilling to me, right? Like have you ever started whether it's like a hobby or whatever it may be in your life and it's great and it's good for you in the beginning, but there comes a point where you kind of outgrow it for that season. You move on to a new chapter of life and it no longer serves you in the same way that it once did. And that's okay. That is life. How I used to be was I would continue to do that thing because I would feel guilty. I would feel so invested in it. And especially if I was doing it with other people, that I didn't want to let them down, or I didn't want to be seen as a quitter. I didn't want to be seen as someone who starts something and doesn't follow through and finish it. And so that is why I would continue to do these things. Recently, in my very early 30s, I started an Outlander book club. And it was such a great decision. I met so many wonderful people, and it brought me so much light in one of the darkest seasons of my life, which is exactly what it was created and meant to do. And it fulfilled that reason for that season. Now, in this season of life, spending that free time reading and rereading Outlander and analyzing it, it's not that I don't enjoy it. It's more so that there are other areas of my life that are more of a priority now. For a while, I really wrestled with this because I felt like, man, I started this thing. I can't just like quit. I can't just let it go. I birthed this thing out into the world. Anyway, long story short, I have taken a step back. And there are other women now who run that book club and they do a fantastic job. And it is feeding them and giving them what they need still in their season. It's still serving them. And so that was a big lesson for me to learn was it's okay to let go of things that are no longer serving me anymore, whether it's they don't interest me, they're not having the same draw or purpose that it once did. And that is okay. Life is too short to read a bad book. I just had an interview with Nick Hutchison in the last episode, and he said that. He's like, life is too short to read a bad book. So if you start a book or a chapter or a project or whatever it may be, and you're like, oh, I don't know if this is exactly what I thought it would be, you don't have to finish reading it. You're not letting someone else down if you're not going to finish the book. You're letting yourself down by continue to do it long past the point when you realize that it's no longer serving you. And then finally, last but not least, the last thing that I am letting go of in my 30s are things that don't matter. I read a book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And that is what I'm trying to do in this season is letting go of the things that truly don't matter in the grand scheme of things. So learning how to zoom out and ask myself, am I going to remember this in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Is this something that really is important? I'm recently divorced. So dating in my 30s, what matters to me now is drastically different than what mattered to me in my 20s. Like back then, it was all about finding someone who was cute and had a nice car and a nice job and dressed nice and tall, dark, and handsome and would make the perfect husband on paper and all these things. And when I went back into the dating world, I was like, I don't care about any of that. I want to know what your values are. Are you emotionally mature? Are you self aware? And are you committed to doing the work and continuing to grow into your best self? That is something that I'm just not going to give energy to is these small things that really in the grand scheme of things, they don't matter. Like I don't care what kind of car you drive. That doesn't matter to me. And what has helped me let go of things that don't matter is to continue to practice the art of acceptance and letting go. And that is a practice. It's not something that just comes naturally. It's not something where it's like you just eliminate caring about things for the rest of your life. Like that's not how life works. It's recognizing when it comes up within me, when I'm like making a big deal out of something that really isn't a big deal, and practicing being able to pause, zoom out, really capture that thought and ask myself, is this worth the energy that I'm giving it? And that's a perfect way to wrap up this episode is, man, how much of our life is spent giving energy to things that don't really matter? That is going to be my goal in the next decade. Hopefully, in 10 years, I'll be able to sit down and see that there are things on this list or new things that I've been able to identify that I can let go of and accept so that it just creates more space and more room to create a life that I truly love. And I hope that is something that you continue to do, that you continue to let go of things so that you can open up and create space to create the life that you want and show up as a person that you want to be, your most authentic self. That brings us to the end of this episode, my friends. I want to know what you think. What are you letting go of in this season? Let me know by sharing on social. You can tag me at Monica Lee Blog and DM me. Let me know you listened to this episode, and I want to know what you are letting go of in this season of life.